So a friend of mine gifted me this bottle, and it goes back much further than I expected. Today, let's see what we can uncover on this episode of Antique Bottle Stories. Searching around on the internet, there were a few things written up stating that this balsam was first invented somewhere around 1840 by a Henry Wistar, who was from Virginia. Now my bottle has Philadelphia on it, so I spent some time looking around for a Henry Wistar in Virginia and Philadelphia without much luck. Philadelphia city directories don't begin until 1861, and he wasn't listed in there. So let's take a look at what I did find. This is a court document dated 1847. The plaintiff is applying for an injunction, which means in this case that he wants the defendant to stop using wrappers for his medicine that resemble his wrappers. Anyways, it states in here in passing that a guy named Williams was the proprietor of this cherry balsam in 1844. He had the original receipt for preparing medicine invented by a Dr. Henry Wistar of Virginia, called Wistar's Balsam of Wild Cherry. Now this says that Williams prepared it and sold it in Philadelphia for great profit. It says about May 1844 though, Williams transferred the sole exclusive rights to manufacture and sell the medicine to a Isaac Butts from New York. So let's stop there for a second. So this Mr. Williams guy sold it in 1844. This court document doesn't go into much detail about when this balsam was invented or how long Mr. Williams had it for before he sold it. But this source claims that Dr. Wistar invented it back in 1840. Well, I found a newspaper article here dated December 1840, and it definitely seems to be well established at this point. It says, the celebrated remedy for diseases of the lungs. Now that doesn't sound like it was just invented. Also, it lists the proprietor as Williams and Company, so that does fit this court document. Plus, it proves that by 1840, Wistar had already invented it and sold it by 1840 because Williams' name is on it. So now let's just estimate then that the remedy was maybe invented 5 years before this. Let's say 1835. That would make Henry Wistar born pretty close to maybe the year 1800. Unfortunately though, Ancestry.com doesn't really have good records for this time in history. I was able to find a Henry Wistar in Virginia who was born about 1805, but he's listed as a farmer in all the records that I found for him, not a doctor. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any records for a Henry Wistar that would tie him to the medicine. I also couldn't find him listed in any papers. For all I know, it could be just a made-up name. It does seem unlikely, but not unheard of. We recently had a video where the name on the product was an altered name from the original name, but this time period was much more inclined to stamp their name on their products. It would also make sense that when the new guy bought the medicine, that he would have wanted to stamp his own name on it. This also makes me think that this medicine was around for a much longer time, to the point where it would hurt the brand to change the name. The name was probably an established and trustworthy brand name, so in that case, it makes sense to keep the trusted name and ride the coattails of that. So, using all these clues, I conclude that this medicine was around for much longer than 1840, but it was never advertised in the paper until this Mr. Williams advertised it. It was probably first sold locally, and then once Mr. Williams took it to Philadelphia, he planned to advertise it on a more national scale. So I would suspect he didn't have it too long before it started showing up in the paper. It sounds like he was doing pretty well with it, so I'm wondering why he sold it after such a seemingly short time. So I wanted to go back to the 1840 article real quick. Something caught my eye. This was selling for $1 a bottle in 1840. That was a lot of money, when an average worker made like maybe $10 to $15 a month. That's a really expensive medicine, so I just wanted to point that out. Now, Google estimates that $1 translates to about $35 today. Maybe. Here's a 1845 ad in the paper. So according to that court document, Mr. Isaac Butts would now be owning this product at this point. So he would be making it from New York. So I was wondering if that means that since my bottle says Philadelphia on it, does that mean that it would date before 1844? But my question was answered in this 1852 ad. Genuine Wistar's Balsam of Wild Cherry has a facsimile of the signature of Henry Wistar, M.D., Philadelphia, and Sanford and Park on a finely executed steel-engraved wrapper. No other can be genuine. So I haven't looked into who Sanford and Park are. I don't know. I found this interesting. Here's all the times that it was mentioned in the newspapers between 1840 and 1850. It's pretty heavy there. It stays heavy into the next decade. Then, the following decade, we start to see a decline. Now, look at 1900 to 1910. I found a bunch of advertisements, much like the ads of this time, many testimonials and a lot of repetitiveness. And here's all the way into 1881. Here's 1893. Not quite putting as much effort into it, but it does catch the eye. Now here's 1902 listed in different sizes. The biggest size is now going for 75 cents. I found this 1894 publication about points of interest in Boston, and this caught my eye here, Seth Fowle. He was listed back on that court record back from 1847, so that's almost 50 years back. I'm not sure the progression, but 50 years later, Seth Fowle and Sons are now manufacturing the balsam. I went back out of curiosity and found Seth's memorial on Find-A-Grave, and this is what it says. First of all, Seth Fowle died back in 1867, so this is 1894, so this is his sons that would be running the business at this point. It says, Mr. Fowle became one of the leading merchants in the drug line. He imported and sold throughout this country and Canada. However, investments in California turned out poorly, and his contributions to those in need caused him to lose money as quickly as he made it. In 1855, he disposed of his drug business except for the Wistar's Balsam. His partner, George Safford, sold his interest to Seth Fowle, and he continued on alone from 1861 to 1865 when his oldest son, Seth Jr., joined the firm. Business increased, but Fowle's outside investments caused heavy losses and his health broke down. He almost lost all of his property, and his death was hastened by those misfortunes. He was a kind friend to young men starting up businesses, and many merchants remembered with gratitude the encouragement and assistance that they received from him. So it sounds like he was a pretty good guy. 1920 is the last time we see this mentioned in the paper, and it's just listed here as Wistar's Balsam. This book, written in 2020, mentions the medicine and says that this medicine contained high doses of opium and high concentrations of alcohol. And it mentions that for these reasons, it was forced off the market by 1920. So it sounds like it lasted maybe a good 90 to 100 years. So let's look at my bottle. It's 8-sided, which is reminiscent of bitters bottles. It says Dr. Wistar's Balsam of Wild Cherry, Philadelphia. Now I haven't figured out what IB means, but look how wonky this neck is. It looks like it's blown in a 3-piece mold, has a tooled top, and I'd say about 1880s maybe. It could be as early as 1870s and as late as the 1890s. There are a few examples online that are paneled, and those date before the Civil War. Here's another one. From the research that I've done, paneled bottles mostly date pre-Civil War. The cherry balsam was heavily advertised in almanacs And about 1881, there was this little story made up about a dude named Bung who had only one lung. And it said he hated doctors, so in order to keep himself alive, he used this balsam. And apparently he recommends it to everyone he meets. It goes on and on and on, and it has these cute illustrations. And that's about it for this one. I hope everybody is doing well, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you for watching.